Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our regular Sunday service, which is also my missed meditation class for yesterday. So you get 2 in 1 kind of today. Before we do get started, please join me in invoking our teacher's name 3 times. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Alrighty, so today's topic is going to be about watching our thinking mind, which again would have been yesterday's meditation class topic. Since I briefly spoke about it during last Sunday's service, I've been kind of meditating and thinking about it a lot since then. It's been the whole topic of consciousness, right? And the study and practice of consciousness is pretty profound and very deep, and there's a lot of information on it. So that's something I used to always study prior to becoming a monk, but since I became a monk, I pretty much have a schedule of topics and practices to study and practice. So I've kind of had to keep on the back burner. But I've had some free time last week, or this week I guess, so I've used some of that to meditate on the thinking mind a little bit more, on consciousness a little bit more. So I slightly want to just add a little bit more detail to what I've spoken about it last week, because I think it's a pretty important topic to not just know, right, but to also practice, because it's essentially it's going to be one of the essential parts of meditation once you get deeper into meditation practice, because ultimately what we've been doing for the meditation class, at least for the past almost year now, was go through some of the really just basic necessities of meditation, right? So it's how to meditate, when to meditate, what to meditate on, and of course we've explained multiple types and techniques and methods to meditate, right, by using meditation objects, like our breath or visualization or mantras or anything else that you've been able to use and successfully accomplish your meditation practice. So all those are your aids to meditation, right? Those are kind of your shortcuts, essentially. You're kind of cheating in a way. Because even those tools that we use are still in a way kind of a distraction, but they're a concentrated distraction, because you're concentrating on just that one thing, on your meditation object, whether it's a sound or your breath or a mantra. That is simply just a concentrated distraction, essentially. And the reason we do that, the reason we have those methods and techniques, is to help avoid additional distractions from coming in, right? It's to help you focus and concentrate on just that one single item. But eventually you want to be able to drop that meditation object and simply just meditate and just be in the moment of meditation, right? And enjoy the fruits that come from meditation. Enjoy the joyous feeling, and the calmness and the peace we get from meditation. But before we get to that, right, after we've essentially kind of between dropping the methods of meditation, your meditation objects, and before meditating on pretty much just nothing and just having a calm mind, in between that we get into a kind of a higher or advanced stage of concentration and meditation, where we are essentially watching our thinking, right? So last week, again, I spoke a little bit about it. I didn't want to go too much into crazy detail because I didn't have much time. So I'm going to try to utilize the next 20-ish minutes to explain as simply and generally as I can and give you the opportunity to go and practice and meditate, and of course do additional studying, practice, and research. But essentially, what we mean by watching our thinking mind is, again, the mind is not who we are, right? The mind essentially controls us as much as we think we control our mind, but our mind is basically the pilot of our life in a way, right? Unconsciously. Um, and so when we are thinking about something, right? We are when we're judging and when we are reacting, when we are um, expressing thoughts and feelings and whatever, right? All these are coming from our mind, our discriminatory mind. Um, and so what we try to do is essentially watch that. And so really when we are practicing the watching or thinking kind of a meditation, we really want to kind of split up our attention a little bit. So typically when we are meditating, we get distracted. We have hopefully an aha moment that says like, oh, wait, I'm distracted, or you're thinking about this or that, or you're overthinking, or you're thinking too much, whatever it may be, right? We have a moment of mindfulness that kind of brings us back to our meditation object. But when we practice watching our thinking, we are essentially allowing our thought process to continue, but we're kind of splitting it up a little bit and then using our consciousness, which is our true self, our true being, our consciousness, our true consciousness, and we're using that to watch our thinking patterns. So it's not just acknowledging that we're thinking and letting it go and go back to our meditation. It's acknowledge that we're thinking and let it continue thinking while you are also consciously watching the thought process and seeing how it goes. And the reason we do this is because this is a really good way to kind of figure out how our mind works, figure out how our thought process works in certain situations. So when we are watching our thought process as the thinking continues, right, and we see and we're conscious of the ideas that are created, when we are conscious of the discriminations that we have, the biases, the judgments, the feelings, and we see all that, then we can contemplate on it and kind of get this realization that, oh wow, I really think like that about this person or about this situation, or I'm judging way more than I think I'm judging, or I'm investing too much emotion into something that I really shouldn't be. So you kind of hopefully get a realization of how you may react, because we think we know ourselves, right? We think we have this body, we have this personality, this ego, this title and power or fame or whatever, and we think we know ourselves. But really, when we are thinking, because we think all the time, right? We have millions of thoughts a day. But because we do so much of that, a lot of it is just unconsciously done. We do it without mindfulness, so our thought process kind of continues and continues, and we judge and we discriminate and we do all these other things as we do our daily stuff. But a lot of it, even though you're thinking it and you may not be consciously knowing that you're thinking it, it's still being kind of programmed in your mind. And so when you're in certain situations where you're kind of not habitually, but when you're judging or discriminating, you do it a few times, then it becomes ingrained in our mind. And then after a while, when you meet a certain person or you're in a certain situation, you almost have a natural reaction to it, without you really thinking about it or being mindful of it. It's because that situation or whatever it is was being programmed in our minds in a certain way. I'm hoping I make sense, because I'm trying to make sense of it in my mind and trying to use words to express the topic or the teaching. Um, so obviously, I may not do as good of a job as being taught by the Buddha, but I am trying to, and it's one of those teachings where where it has to be experienced versus being taught to you, right? Just like any other advanced topic in Buddhism, like emptiness or the eight consciousnesses, all these things have to be experienced and not necessarily taught to you. So I'm kind of breaking that rule in a way and trying to use words to talk about it a little bit. So I apologize if half of what I say doesn't make sense, but ultimately, again, what we're trying to do is just watch how our mind works and see what situations, what circumstances, what areas or people or whatever bring up certain emotions with us or different thought processes, right? Whether it's negative, positive, or just neutral, we still want to learn how our mind works. And so as we do that, and it's difficult. It's pretty difficult to kind of be able to separate the thinking and also be able to watch as the thinking happens. Because naturally, what happens if we are meditating and we have a thought that comes up, we react right away with, oh, I'm thinking, let me go back to my meditation or my meditation object. And so, of course, we do want to be able to do that for quite some time and be able to master and get to a point where your thinking has lessened quite a bit, right? Because if you've just started meditation and you still really can't control the thinking or the distractions from meditation, right? A few distractions is perfectly fine. It's normal to have it as long as you're able to acknowledge it. You realize that you're thinking, and you go back to your meditation, right? So I would say probably like up to 10 distractions per like 30-minute meditation is fine. And so the less distractions you have, the better you're going to be able to kind of move forward with your practice and go to more advanced practices. So once you've gotten a hold of being able to have fewer distractions than a normal person would have, then we can work on being able to kind of separate the thinking and separate our consciousness and being able to use our consciousness, our true self, to watch the thinking as it's happening. And again, that's going to be a little bit difficult, but eventually we will all get there, right? You'll get there after a while, after a little bit of practice, because at first you're going to be like, oh, I'm thinking, and then go back to your meditation, and you're going to be like, oh, wait, I was supposed to watch that thinking and not let it go. And that's gonna happen for quite some time. But eventually we will be able to get to a point where we can watch the thinking, know that we're thinking, but also consciously and knowingly watch it as it's happening. And then that way, after some time, you may not learn anything new about yourself or about your mind with that first session or a few sessions, but after a while, you'll be able to kind of collect all the data from your thinking and make a pattern and see a pattern of thinking process type, right? Whether it's something that's positive or negative or just kind of neutral or just kind of random or wrong or right, whatever it is, we'll see a pattern after a while. But that helps us because not only are we going to be able to learn and kind of discover how our thinking and how our mind works, but it also create a pretty strong foundation of clear mind thinking, of clear mind meditation, because that's pretty much the last part. Because once we've been able to watch our thinking and meditate and contemplate on the things that we're being distracted by or thinking of, we can sometimes it's a certain person or situation or place that kind of brings up certain emotions or feelings or thoughts or whatever. Um, and so if we're able to see the pattern of something that's kind of in a way negatively impacting our lives and making us feel a certain way or do things that we don't necessarily want to do or feel comfortable doing, then we can be able to see that and eliminate it, and maybe eliminate it from our lives. That way it's not causing us all that, stress or anxiety or negative feelings. But eventually, um, because we can see our thinking, right, in a way, see our thinking or know that we're thinking, um, our mind will also grow in that same practice where it'll stop thinking altogether eventually, right? Because it's saying, oh, you see me thinking, I'm trying to distract you, or I'm trying to take you away from your meditation. And so after a while, your mind will, in a way, reprogram to know that, okay, when you're sitting, when you're walking, or you're doing your practice, or you're trying to meditate, it'll know that this is a time for stillness. This is the time for it to be quiet. So eventually the thinking and the distractions will stop. Um, and once they do, then that's that's all that work was preliminary work for the real meditation that comes afterward, right? Um, and so the real meditation is when we've basically been able to eliminate 90 plus percent of our thinking and distractions. And then we can get into like the higher levels of meditation, higher levels of consciousness, um, where we are able to, where feelings were over, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Where we are basically feeling constant joy and constant calmness in our mind. And there's about 4 levels of higher meditation. And each level you are kind of getting rid of the good things that you got from the prior level and then gaining something better. And as you move up, you're losing and gaining something. Um, and eventually you get to the highest level where it's just complete calmness and complete equanimity. Um, and from there, that is essentially where that is essentially the level where we can fully be able to consciously contemplate on the teachings, the higher teachings, the more advanced teachings like emptiness, specifically emptiness. Because it's only at that point where we can truly meditate on emptiness, discover its true meaning, and be able to see things as they really are, through the teaching of emptiness and other higher teachings. But of course, we can always, anytime, meditate on emptiness to a point. But until we get to a higher level of meditation, any meditation we do on a kind of lower level will be fairly superficial and not really in depth, or at least not enough to really penetrate the true meaning, the true teaching of emptiness. But regardless of that, we still want to be able to practice watching our thinking. So I would suggest, for those that have been meditating for at least a year or less, watching your thinking is not going to be beneficial for you yet, unless you've achieved pretty serious meditation practice. But unless